Ayan's evenings were usually quiet. After long hours at the office, he'd come home, toss his keys on the table and scroll through his phone without much purpose. It was a Thursday night when his phone buzzed. A long, emotional message filled with frustration, confusion, and heartbreak. It wasn't meant for him. He read it again to be sure. He looked right at me and lied. It began. A paragraph later it ended with, "I don't know why I expected better." Puzzled, Ayan replied, "Hey, I think this message came to the wrong number. But I hope you're okay." A few minutes later a reply came. "Oh no. I'm so sorry. That was meant for my best friend. I didn't mean to bother you." He could have left it there. He didn't know a stranger or anything. But something about the rawness of the message stayed with him. "No bother at all. Sounds like you had a rough day." A few seconds passed. Then a longer reply. "Yeah. I did. Sorry again. I'm Ria." He hesitated, then replied. "I'm Ayan. Don't worry about it. Happens to the best of us." That was it for the night. No more messages, just a weird little moment that left Ayan with a sense of curiosity he hadn't felt in a while. The next evening he got another message. "Hope your day was better than mine. Mine involved spilled coffee and a very awkward meeting." He smiled. "I survived 6 meetings and ran out of coffee before noon. So no, not better." They exchanged small thoughts, not heavy or overly deep, just enough to feel like someone out there got it. By the end of the week they were chatting daily, short messages, sarcastic remarks, random quotes. Ria had a way of turning mundane details into poetic lines, while Ayan brought calm and dry humor to their conversations. One night she texted, "Isn't it strange? How I don't even know what you look like and yet I wait for your texts more than I wait for messages from my own friends." Ayan paused before responding. "Maybe that's because we started by saying something real. No filters." The connection wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just easy. Comfortable. Ayan, who hadn't really spoken to anyone openly since his breakup last year, found himself laughing again. Ria, still skeptical of love after a string of half-hearted dates, felt safe. Neither of them admitted they were drawn to each other. It wasn't necessary. There was an unspoken rhythm between them. They kept things simple. Good mornings, bad jokes, questions like, "What would your last meal be?" Or, "If you could escape for a week, where would you go?" For two strangers they felt oddly familiar. It all started with a wrongly sent message. A simple accident. But something about that mistake began to matter. Neither of them knew where it was headed. But they both knew something had shifted. In a world full of noise they'd found something quiet, and that quiet felt like peace. Their texts became a routine neither of them questioned. It wasn't planned, but somehow, every evening found them back in conversation. What started as light chatter grew into something deeper. Ayan would vent about frustrating colleagues or the pressure of constant deadlines, and Ria would listen with surprising attention, often replying with thoughtful insights or dry humor that made him laugh out loud in his apartment. Ria shared snippets of her poems. Never the full thing, just a few lines she wasn't sure about. Ayan didn't pretend to understand poetry, but he liked how she wrote. "There's something quiet about your words," he texted once. "They feel like a pause in a loud room." He screenshotted that. Didn't say anything about it, just kept it. They began asking each other questions that friends don't usually ask. "What's something you wish people knew about you? What scares you the most when you're alone?" The answers weren't always pretty, but they were real. Ria admitted that she had a habit of running away from anything that felt too close. Ayan confessed that he often buried his feelings under work, because feeling anything too deeply made him feel weak. Despite the emotional depth, they never talked about meeting. It wasn't avoidance, it just didn't feel urgent. What they had didn't need a face to survive. It was built on voice notes, inside jokes, and the safety of being understood. They spoke almost every night now. Not out of obligation but habit. Comfort. One night, Ria sent a voice message. It was just her laughing about something clumsy she did in class, but hearing her laugh instead of reading it made something shift in Ayan. It felt real. Positive. He replied with a voice note of his own, hesitant at first, his tone quiet but warm. She responded within minutes. "You sound exactly how I imagined. Calm, kind, a little tired." They started calling each other. At first it was short, 10 maybe 15 minutes. Then longer. Time passed differently during those conversations. They'd lose track until it was almost morning. There were pauses, silences that didn't feel awkward. Ria would talk about her favorite lines from novels. Ayan would talk about old memories of his childhood that he hadn't revisited in years. They weren't labeling what they had. But something was growing between them and it didn't need validation. It was in the way Ria texted him first when something funny happened. In the way Ayan would catch himself waiting for her goodnight message. Neither wanted to admit how much space the other had taken up in their day. Maybe it was too soon, or maybe they were scared that calling it something would ruin the ease of it all. But in between the everyday updates and late-night calls, they were building something fragile, something real. No promises were made. No big declarations. Just two people falling into step, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, and without noise. It was a quiet Tuesday when Ayan noticed the change. No message from Ria in the morning. No random quote. No check-in by noon. He waited, thinking she might be busy. But the entire day passed without a word. The next day was the same. Then the third. The silence was sudden and loud. He tried not to overthink it. Maybe her exams were on. Maybe she needed a break. But when someone becomes part of your daily rhythm, their absence plays on repeat. He sent a simple message, "Hope everything's okay." No reply. Days later his phone buzzed. A long text. She apologized. Said she had been away visiting her family. Then, without much build-up, she told him her ex had reached out during the trip. She wasn't expecting it and it confused her. "I didn't feel what I thought I'd feel," she wrote. "But it made me realize how much I've been avoiding what I haven't healed." Ayan read the message twice before responding. "I get it. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." She didn't reply that night. Or the next. He told himself not to take it personally. But something had shifted. The lightness in their connection had dimmed. Their rhythm was off. He missed her voice notes, her strange theories about life, the random articles she used to send. For the first time in months, he started overworking again, going to bed with unread messages that weren't from her. He tried focusing on other things, but nothing held his attention the same way. It wasn't about missing a routine. It was about missing her. He wondered if maybe she had decided to move on. Maybe their conversations were just a phase for her. A temporary distraction. But deep down he didn't believe that. There had been too much truth in their silences, too much ease in the way they spoke. You don't fake comfort like that. A week passed. Then still nothing. He didn't want to reach out again. Not out of pride but respect. If she was figuring herself out, he didn't want to intrude. But not knowing where they stood was harder than he expected. There was no closure. Just a long pause, heavy with unanswered thoughts. Late one night he scrolled back through their old messages. A screenshot she had sent of a line from a book. "Some people don't meet by accident. They arrive like answers to questions you didn't know you were asking." He remembered how that made him pause the first time. It hit harder now. He didn't delete their chat. He didn't mute the thread. He just waited, not with expectation but with quiet hope. He didn't need her to promise anything. He just needed to know if what they had mattered to her too. What hurt wasn't the distance. It was the not knowing. And the space between them felt filled with everything they hadn't said. The message came at 7:14 p.m. after 21 days of silence. It was short. Just a sentence. "You were the calm I didn't know I needed. Can we start over?" Ayan read it once, then again. There was no punctuation beyond the question mark, no explanation, no long apology. But it said everything he'd been waiting to hear. He didn't reply with a text. He called her. She picked up on the second ring. No hello. Just a quiet, almost breathless, "I wasn't sure you'd call. I wasn't sure I'd stop waiting," he said. There was a pause, the kind that holds more weight than words. She finally spoke, voice steady but soft. "I thought going back would give me answers. Instead it made everything more confusing. But one thing became clear. I felt more peace in our silence than I did in any of those loud moments from my past." He didn't rush her. He never had to. She went on, "I don't want to escape or distract myself anymore. I want something that grows slowly. Something honest. Like what we had. If you still want it." He replied simply, "I do." They didn't need to rehash what had gone wrong. They didn't dissect feelings or overanalyze time lost. They just started talking again naturally like before. But this time without the fear of naming it. Days passed and their bond returned stronger. Not because of urgency but because of clarity. They spoke not as two people hoping for something but as two people choosing it. Eventually they decided to meet. No big plans, no dramatic setup. Just a casual agreement to see the face behind the voice, the eyes behind the words. When it finally happened, neither of them felt nervous. There was no grand reaction, no cinematic moment. It just felt right. As if their voices had always belonged in the same space. She smiled when she saw him and he felt it, not just in his chest but everywhere. In the way her presence filled the silence. And how familiar it all felt. They didn't label what they were, didn't rush toward anything beyond the next moment together. And that was enough. Because the connection wasn't built on need, it was built on understanding. Later that night as they both sat quietly, Ria whispered, "Do you ever think about how one wrong message led to all this?" Ayan looked at her, then down at his phone. That first message was still saved. He replied, "Maybe it wasn't wrong. Maybe it just found the right person by mistake." Sometimes all it takes is a single message to change the direction of two lives. Not because it's perfectly written or sent at the perfect time, but because it lands in the heart that's ready for it. And when it does, everything shifts, not loudly but deeply. Not instantly but permanently.